Hello, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today is a Fun Fold Friday where I share a fun fold every other week, and we are on week number 3. This is what we're going to be making today, this kind of a fun fold. I'm going to share an A2 size card with you, and I'm also going to be sharing an A7 card with you. And I'll give you those dimensions, so stick around as we make these. One of those we're even going to make a fun background for. So that's why this video is a little bit longer, but these are a very fun, easy card to make, and I hope that this video inspires you. So let's talk about what we're using today. This is our Planet Earth from Trinity Stamps, and we have our Planet Earth banner along with our Clean Cut Layers Circle A. I'm using the Circle A just so that I have a base for that Planet Earth. We're also going to be using the Thanks a Watt dies and our Watts Up stamps. And then we're going to bring in some embellishments later as well, and I'll share those with you. And then we have this Honeybee Stamps Harvest Festival paper. I'm not sure if it's still available. Just grab whatever you have in your stash. If it is available, I'll have it linked down below. But otherwise, yeah, just grab what you have in your stash and let's play along. So I've gone ahead and already die cut out everything out of white cardstock because I do want to color this with my alcohol markers. And in true Cassie fashion, I have everything taped back together with some mint tape. We have a black circle that came from the Clean Cut Layers Circle A, and that fits perfectly behind our little Planet Earth. And then I've got our outline of Planet Earth along with all the other little pieces that I'll put into my tidy tray. So I've grabbed some of my Olo markers. I'll put those colors up on the screen. I'm starting by coloring everything with a BG 2.1, and I was inspired with these colors based off of that pattern paper that I decide to use, and you'll see later. And I bring in another color, and then I realize later on I do need some darker stuff. So I've got BG 2.3. It's like I forgot that the actual land is probably going to be a little bit darker than the water, right? So you'll see me fix that later on. But we're just using a feathering motion, and we'll blend that back in with our 2.1 and then bring in those darker colors later. All right, so now we need to start actually assembling this. So I'm going to bring in that circle along with the outline. I'll bring in a white piece of paper so you can actually see what it is we're doing here. And then I'll just use little dots of glue on the back of this outline. And then don't worry about if you've put a little bit too much. That will dry clear, especially if you use this Barely Art glue. This works perfect. And then once we have that all covered, we'll attach that down to the circle. And you'll see it shifts here, but again, not worried because that stuff will all get covered by the land and water. And again, it dries clear. So there we have our outline all ready to go for those pieces. So I'm going to take my Barely Art glue and we're going to put it right in where the water would go. Take that water off of there and we'll attach that down inside. It's pretty simple to do. And it's here I think I'm starting to realize eventually that the land's going to need to be a different color. So we will bring in a darker color. And the reason that this video is as long as it is mostly because of making this particular card, working on that background. We have everything sped up pretty quickly, but once we get to the measurements, we will, bring it back down to regular speed. See, that's where I'm looking at it going, ooh, that's not going to work. So I'm going to pull that off of there. We'll bring in the darker colors. Beauty of using the liquid glue is it gives you a few seconds to work with it. Stick that back down on my mint tape. And then here's where we'll color those up. Bring in that 2.3 and then the next darker color, which I don't remember. I think it's 2.4. And these are Olos. I've been using these a lot lately. I still use my Copics, but I really do like my Olos, and they work really well together. So putting down that base of that darker 2.3, and then we can then bring in an even darker color. And then we'll just feather those out. So we're just going to keep working that until we are happy with how that blends. But yeah, that's a process and it's fun. So there they are. Now we can actually start attaching down the land. And there are some pretty small pieces with this Planet Earth. I just, like I said, keep those into a tidy tray so that I don't lose them. And that includes the outline. That also includes the tiny little pieces of land that would go in there. It's all fun and games till you lose one of those, right? Then you gotta die cut it again. I didn't lose any this time, so we're good there. Thankfully, die cutting is simple enough. I'm going to go back in and just kind of work some of that color a little bit more as well. I really love these colors. These blue-greens are just beautiful. Okay, so there are those pieces. I only kept those because they have the outline. I'm just going to pop out the land centerpiece. We don't need the black one, so we'll get rid of that. And then I'm using my reverse tweezers to make sure that I can put everything down in there very simply. Especially once you start getting to those smaller pieces, that is super, super helpful. So now we've attached everything in there. This is how our little planet looks. I love how that looks. Imagine the color combos you could do if you didn't want it to be the same. Now we have this Planet Earth banner stamp set, and I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, that goes along with the banner. So they're separate, but yeah, I've got both of them. And then I'm just going to color these banners pretty simply as well. We've got a really dark gray for the back one. And these are all cool colors. So that was cool gray 5. We've got cool gray 3. And then this cool gray 1. I'm just adding some feathered bits to that. And then I'm going to stamp my sentiment on there. I really like this banner sentiment because it hits almost all the things. Like it hits birthday, it hits Christmas, it hits just like you're an awesome human or I love you. And so this is an all-around great stamp set to go along with our planet. And then I'm going to start attaching everything down. So we'll put the front of our banner on there. At first I wasn't sure if I wanted the back piece of the banner to go behind the earth, but I decide that I don't. I'm just going to attach the whole banner together, and then we'll just put that right over the planet. And then we can see how cool that banner looks. Then we can attach it to our planet just using some liquid glue. I'm not going to use any foam tape at this point because we will be using foam tape later. So here is our planet all done with our beautiful little banner on that. It's ready to go. And so we will set that off to the side and we're going to start working on a background. Now this is unnecessary. Like you don't have to do this part, but I really didn't want a white background behind my planet. I wanted it to look like we had space in the background. So I have brought in some distress ink colors, and the colors that I chose were based off of some patterned paper that came in that fall harvest. And I just put those down onto that tonic mat. Those colors were Iced Spruce, Evergreen Bough, and Cracked Pistachio. And those are just the regular distress inks. And I am going to just keep repeating this process. If you've never ink smushed before, it's basically just putting the ink down in there, hitting it with some water, and taking your paper. In this case, it is some distress watercolor paper. Any other watercolor paper or heavy mixed media paper would work really well here. And I'm just going to keep repeating that process so we build up that background. I brought in some Cracked Pistachio Distress Oxide Spray, running my fingers through that so that it gives it a little bit more of a organic look. And that made it very minty. So I'm going to have to bring that back a little bit. I do like what it adds, but we need to bring in those colors again. So we've brought in our Evergreen Bough and our Iced Spruce. And we're going to, once again, just smush everything back in there. And it's starting to really look great. This process, I could do this all day long with all different color combos and just come up with fun backgrounds because I love the end result. So here we have it. But I'm not done. I am going to bring in one of my blending brushes and blend on that Iced Spruce all over it. And I keep comparing it to the paper that I've tried to match it up with. Obviously, it's not going to be perfectly matched to the pattern paper that I chose, but it's going to be pretty close, and you're going to see that. I think that was so fun. And then I'll bring in some Black Soot Distress ink, and we will darken up those edges a little bit more, and we'll blend that color all over throughout that as well, just to dull back those colors a little bit. But this is working in layers, so that's what makes this so great. Put some water splatters all over that, let that dry for a few seconds, and then I'll wipe that up with a microfiber cloth. And then I do want to hit this with my heat tool, make sure that's nice and dry, because I do have some Distress Glaze. So that's the micro glaze. This is going to basically, I guess, seal it is what I would say. It seals it. I'm just using a finger. You could use like a blending foam if you don't like using your finger. And then I'll buff that away once I've completely covered it. But that will seal the piece because those colors are obviously water reactive. And I'm wanting to put some white paint splatters all over that, which is the picket fence. And if I just did that right over the top, it would start absorbing some of that color in the background and they wouldn't be a true white. So I wanted that to be a true white. I'll clean up my mess and check that out. It looks really cool. So we're going to hit that with our heat tool. We need that to be nice and dry. And that's the pattern paper I was sort of trying to emulate. And I'm close. Not perfect, but I like it. Okay, so now we can actually start building our card. Let's talk about the pieces you'll need. You'll need a card panel. This is an A2 card panel that measures 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, just one solid piece. And then we have this piece of cardstock. I'm using white. You could use any light colored or even dark, I suppose, if you wanted. This measures 8 inches by 5 1/4 inches, and it will be scored at 4 inches. So that's basically going to be scored right down the center of that. And the reason for that is once we put that onto that black card panel, we're going to have a nice black border all the way around it. I suppose you could skip that step, but that will make your back look a little bit messy once we start assembling everything. So I think you do need that black panel or some panel of whatever. So there it is. And once it gets attached to the card, it's going to actually be upside down. So it'll attach like that. You'll have that nice border around it. And then like I said, this part was completely unnecessary. You wouldn't have to do this piece at all if you didn't want to, but I really wanted it. So I need to trim this down to fit the front of that card or the card base. So I'm going to cut this down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, and I'm going to save those little pieces because those are going to go on the inside of my card just to embellish it a little bit more because we have a lot of room to work with in there. So, and I will actually end up trimming this down even a little bit more later on, but we'll talk about that. So we've got those 2 extra pieces. I'm going to attach this to the front of our card, just using some liquid glue. But again, like I said, that part was completely unnecessary if you didn't want to do it. For our A7, I will show you because I don't do anything on the front of it other than embellish it with some embellishments. All right, so we're attaching that down. Trying to make sure that's all lined up. And you can actually see how slow I work because that's real time. Okay, and then I'm going to trim down these pieces to fit on the inside of our card. Just trimming them down just a little bit, and we'll attach those to the front. I decided to speed this up because it took a second. But I do love bringing the outside in, so I really like how that looks. Looks good. All right, so that's our inside. Now this piece, this is going to measure 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. So it's a square, all right? So 3 3/4. And what we're going to do is we're going to score this right down the center diagonally. So you just pick one of those diagonals and we're going to put that into our score buddy. Now I like to use a double-sided patterned paper because I think that adds a lot of interest. You wouldn't have to, but once you open up the card, you're going to see the inside of that flap. If white is what you want, that might be where you go, but I really like the pattern. I think that just adds an extra bit once you open up the card. Okay, so now we have it basically in a triangle, and then we're going to attach that to our card. All right, so how that's going to work is it's going to fit on there. I don't have it on the right piece, but we're going to fit that across like that. And so what we need to do is add glue to one side of that. So we're going to add our glue. And I'm using liquid glue because I have found that is the strongest. I don't want this card falling apart, so we're going to use liquid glue. So now I'll just attach that to that back piece. And then once you close that up, you may decide that you need to trim down your panel just a little bit more. And I'm realizing that I probably do because it's a little bulky there. So I'll just trim off a hair. I probably turned off a little too much, but just a slight bit. You don't need a lot off of there. And I'm cut through 2 layers there. So, and once that closes up, it'll close a lot better. So there you have it. And now we're going to go ahead and attach this down to that black panel using our liquid glue once again. Covering that whole back. Nice black border. And then this is where we bring in our planet. So you would want to choose like a big center piece, something that would work really well. So you do kind of have to think about what you're going to put there. But I'm going to use my mint tape to hold our little planet in place. I can't survive without this mint tape, I'm telling you. And now they have like a dispenser for it. So yeah, scrapbook.com, I had to get it. I am going to put some foam tape on the area that is not covered by where our flap is. So you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll just trim this down. And I have just enough covering that area. And then we can peel off our release paper. See, it's going to pop up because we need our flap to go behind it. So you don't want any tape there. So we'll peel off that release paper, and then when we close it up, our planet will be attached down. You just want to make sure that whatever you're using, you have enough to actually keep it attached. So I'll peel off that mint tape. And then this is how the card works. That flap can just come out of there and your card opens up. How cool is that? I just love it. So there it is. We're going to embellish it later, but I'm happy with it. So let's move on to our 5x7. I'm going to show you the pieces. We'll color those up. Once again, we're using our Thanks a Watt dies. And I just was showing you which pieces I use. There's thanks, there's love, there's watt, the words in there. You just have a lot of options for how fun this is. And then I also have the pieces for that bottom part of the light bulb. So we'll make this a little bit 3D, or at least give it some dimension. We did cut out one of our background pieces using some of that craft cardstock, and I'm going to attach these pieces down just using some more of our liquid glue. So just once again, I chose a larger element that I thought would really work well with that flap. And then we can attach these down using our liquid glue. How fun is that, right? I do like how the little watts in there, you can have like the squiggle, you can have the watt say hello, you can have the watt or whatever it's called, filament. I don't know. I'm not an electrician. My son's going to school to be one. He would probably know. But yeah, crafts are my thing, not a light bulb. All right, so then I can attach that down. How cute. And I'm going to add just some low lights to that light bulb as well, just using some more of our Olo markers. So we've got just our WG1. And then I need to attach down those little pieces, and I'll use my reverse tweezers for that also. We'll zoom in so you can see kind of how that goes, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Once you die cut out that piece, there are some embossed lines. And you could completely bypass this part, but I just decided it looked a little cuter with these on there. So you just put those right over the top of those embossed lines. And then we're just about done. But you get the gist. So we'll put all those on there, and then our light bulb is ready to go. All right, there it is, super cute. Next, we'll talk about the pieces we need. So since this is an A7 or a 5x7 card, your A7 panel is 5x7. And I've chosen a craft cardstock. Our regular big piece is going to be 6 3/4 inches by 9.5. And then we have to score that at 4 3/4, which is half of 9.5. I did the math for you, so pause this if you need to, but this is a pretty simple card. So here we are at 4 3/4. Just going to score that. And once again, the reason we do this is so that we have that nice border on the background. I suppose you could, if you didn't want it to have that border, you could, not do that. But I do like the border. All right, so there you have your piece. It's going to leave a nice crafty border around the edges, which is perfect. And since I'm not going to be doing anything to the front of this, we don't have to worry about that. And then this square piece measures 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. And once again, we are going to score this diagonally. Again, that came from that fall harvest honeybee paper pack. Again, I don't know if that's available. I got this paper a little while ago, but I just love it. And it is double-sided. I love some double-sided paper. And it's like a linen look in there. Isn't that cool? Okay, so we'll just make sure that that's nice and even, good and scored, and then we can start actually doing some assembly. I will add some little pieces of the red to the inside of our card later on, but you aren't going to see that. I decided after the fact. All right, so we're going to put our glue just on one portion of the inside of the panel. And then we will attach this down to the back. Again, you may need to trim off some of your card to make sure that everything closes. I trim off just a little bit. Now we're going to attach our light bulb, once again bringing in that mint tape. And before I actually attach it down, I do decide, with our foam tape, I do decide on the sentiments I want. So I'm bringing in that What's Up stamp set, and I'm going to stamp out the words thank you and you brighten my day on some craft cardstock. And then we will trim that down using our guillotine trimmer, but I do want to stamp on the inside as well. You make this world a brighter place. I love this as a thank you so much. Oh my goodness. So we're trimming it down, and then once those are all trimmed down, we're just using that clear plate on the front to line everything up. Once everything is trimmed down, we can start now putting our foam tape on the back of our light bulb. So it may not look like a lot of foam tape on this light bulb. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead and attach this down to the front panel, take off that mint tape, and then I decide I want the You Brighten My Day to go over the light bulb. So in order to do that, I am going to put a little bit of foam tape on both sides of it. That will just reinforce the light bulb a little bit more. So we have a little more foam tape down there at the bottom. And then I'll attach thank you to right above it using some of that foam tape also. Oh my goodness, this looks so good. And so then you can see how that's going to open, but we'll attach this down to our craft panel nice and quickly there. Check it out. And that's how it's going to open, super simple. Look at that. How fun is that? So I did embellish these. I ended up using some Ruby Radiance and some Looking Glass. The Ruby Radiance is on our 5x7 and our Looking Glass is on our smaller little A2 size card. I'm in love with both of these. I hope you do want to try this out. And I'd love to know what you think of these. Is this something that you would give a try to, since it is so simple? And let me know if you're enjoying this series. I've certainly been enjoying doing this series. Head on back to my channel and check out the other fun folds if you haven't gotten a chance to see them. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.